very quickly about the structure, I suppose, of tonight's evening. I am about to hand over to Michael Rock, who's a composer and who brought this wonderful quartet here with us to perform for us tonight. They will play the first piece. There will be a short interval in the middle during which you can grab another glass of whatever you prefer. And then you'll be ushered back for the second half, after which it will be my great pleasure to hand over to our host this evening, Ambassador Sheehan, who will say a few words of welcome, and then hand over to Edward Beckett, and the reception will follow after the second part of the music. Okay? So, my pleasure to introduce Michael Rock.
Turn off your cell phones. Seriously, turn them off because they actually interfere with the speakers. So as we say in America, turn off your cell phone. I'm not that belligerent. I'm just, but we don't want the sound of like little buzzing coming through there, and it actually happens even here in Ainad and Galina said that I should say a few words about what I'm here. So I will. What I wanted to say is I'm from New York originally. I went to high school in New York and on Long Island. And there was a literature teacher named Kenneth Jenkins. And I wasn't in his class. But there was an extra ticket one evening to go see this play in New York City, and he decided for some reason that I should go. And so, and I don't know why, but he said you should take the extra ticket. So we all took the train into the city, and on the way in, I had a lot of friends in the class, and they were all joking around saying, well, what are you doing? I don't know, waiting for Godot, what are you doing? I didn't know what they were talking about. I really was a rock and roll boy and the hippie editor of my newspaper. That's really what I was about. So I had no idea what I was going to see. I now know that I was at the Sheridan Square Playhouse. I now know that Alan Schneider was directed it. But that meant absolutely nothing to me. So in many ways, I think I was the perfect audience. Because I've not been told I'm seeing a great play, and I didn't go to plays. And the only way that I would sum up that evening is that I always thought that life was kind of strange. But I really didn't know till that evening that art could do what that did. So it really put me on a course of stuff. Because in some ways, as I think about it, let's say historically, well, the Beatles had just broken up. And I was very attracted to the notion that living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see. I think I know, I mean, yes, but it's all wrong. That is, I think I disagree. Nothing is real and nothing to get hung about. That made sense to me. but they'd broken up. And so then I go see something that says mankind, in spite of the tennis, wastes and pines, wastes and pines. Well, that said something to me too. So then I went to the university in Michigan. I acted in a production of Endgame. Be grateful you didn't see me. And became the composer I am. But among other things, my teacher at Michigan, his teacher was Martin Nestlin, who I guess was from here, right? Am I right about that? Anybody? Nobody? Okay.
No.
No? I thought he was. I thought he was from here, but maybe not.
Oh, sorry. Yes, here. Yeah, right here.
Here. I win. Okay. So, see, I've read a couple of books, not all of them, but I've read a couple. Anyway, so and I met Martin several times while I was an undergrad at Michigan through my teacher, and then when I graduated from college, I went to London and traveled around England for about 6 weeks, just doing what you do when you're 21, trying to say, okay, so now what? But I did have coffee with Martin Esslin. When I think about it now, I wonder how we got together because we didn't like have email even. You know, and we didn't have like a phone. I must have sent him a letter. I have no idea. But we did meet for coffee in Kit Kat bars. And, you know, and he said, well, you seem like a pleasant young man. I said, thank you. And then I said, you know, someday I'd really like to set some Beckett. And he said, well, why don't you just write to him? And I said, okay. So he said, just write to him, care of his publisher. And the timeline gets a little bit fuzzy here, but I guess about 2 years later, I was living at my parents' house still, and I wrote to him. I don't have my letter to him, but I know that it said something like, it probably said Martin Esslin's name about, I don't know, 500-600 times. But it also said, you know, these are pieces of yours that I read, and they're prose pieces and poetry, and one of these would be great if you know, be so kind. And then about 4 or 6 weeks later, I got a letter from Paris, and I didn't recognize the return address. And as I say, I don't have my letter to him, but in fact, I do have the letter. Woo! And I thought, it's never traveled back across the Atlantic Ocean. It should go on a little journey. So I took it out of its frame, and there's the letter. See, so it's true. This is the whole damn thing, no matter what you think, it's legit. You know, or you know, I just thought that I would air it a bit, right? Yeah, that's pretty good. Come on, that's pretty good. Okay, so and he says, I've not read it. No. I do have it memorized. So this is 1980. So put that timeline. That's how old I am. Okay. Dear Mr. Roth, thank you for your letter. You have my permission to set one of my texts to music. Of those you suggest, Imagination Dead Imagine seems to me the most appropriate. With all good wishes, yours sincerely, Samuel Beckett. Oh, isn't that nice? He was a very nice guy. So, yeah, I tell you. So that happened, and then the letter, I framed it. I took it out of its frame for now. Perhaps I'll sell it if I can't find my way back. No, I probably won't. But anyway, so so the letter was on my wall for a long time, sort of saying, okay, big guy, I mean, you're such a good composer, what the hell are you going to do about it, you know? And my feeling was, well, you know, I mean, in this crowd, do I have to say it's a prose piece? How many people don't know that? Well, I think we all do. Okay. And it's like 1,100, 1,200 words, and every time I thought about somebody singing it, it just seemed like a terrible idea. And I even talked to some folks in a choir, but nothing really came of it, and it just stayed on my wall, and I would look at it every so often and think about it. But then, I don't know, this stuff happened with technology that's kind of changed the way composers do things. It gives us tools that we couldn't have even imagined in 1980, or as I say, you know, the fact that we have an undo command is really powerful. Because back when we were using tape, we couldn't undo something and then bring it back and then undo it again. No, you couldn't do that. But we can do that now 1,000 times a day. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Thank you. So anyway, over the years, I've worked at a lot of places, and finally what I started doing was I asked various people to record the text. Mainly, I was working at the Stratford Festival in Canada, so I asked some of my friends there, and then some friends in LA, a friend from South Africa. And the thing that most intrigued me as I didn't know where I was going with this, but what I really sort of liked about it was everybody read it differently. Everybody emphasized different things. Some people found it kind of funny, some people found it kind of mean, some people found it kind of sexy. Whatever, but nobody was changing anything, but I liked all the different responses. So I ended up with about 7 actors. We each did 3 or 4 takes of it. I certainly recorded mistakes because it just didn't matter, you know. And then I imported all of it into Pro Tools. Everybody know what that is? Okay, good. Just making sure. You know. And I lined everything up syllable by syllable. So I had a chorus of voices, syllable by syllable, going through this text. And then I started kind of playing with the different voices, and then I put it all to a click track, which is basically a metronome sort of track. And then, wondering what else I should do with it, basically I said, well, a string quartet walks into a bar and presses the space bar on a computer, and something happens. And that's what I wrote. So you'll hear that in a little bit, but it would really be awful if I brought my friends here and you only heard my music. So the program they're going to play for you is 3 pieces. The first thing that they'll play is some themes and variations on the American folk tune Shenandoah. When I think about the piece here tonight and why it's here, you know, 6 or 7 years ago to have played variations on Shenandoah would have meant something, but I don't know if you know, America's a kind of an interesting place nowadays. I don't know if it's maybe read about it. It's been in all the papers, and so it just has a different resonance to me to hear variations on a song that's working on one river and missing the river that you're from. And this is a city that has a very famous river with famous music written about it too. So that feels very resonant to me. So the variations are by Rick Sourish, right? Just a little trivia fact that's interesting about just the resonance of it is that the Shenandoah actually is a tributary to the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., but the source of the river is Harper's Ferry, which is home of the first insurrection against slavery by John Brown. So that's interesting too. Then after that, they're going to play a piece by a friend of ours, a woman named Elena Ruhr. She also studied at the University of Michigan with the same teacher I did, William Bolton. So Elena also studied dance, right? Yep. Right. So this is her, which string quartet? Sorry, the third string quartet, and it's sort of, it uses dance, rhythm, all that sort of stuff.
And it's in 4 movements.
And it's in 4 movements. Okay. That's I just want to add one other little fact, if I may. So I said that that this English teacher, when I was 17, had invited me to go see this play, even though he wasn't my teacher, and I have no idea why. His name was Kenneth Jenkins, and he was very famous at my high school, and then he eventually started teaching at Nassau Community College. He was the first African-American teacher in my high school. He'd been there for about 10 years before I was there. And so he was kind of this legendary figure in the neighborhood. And when he moved on, he became very active in African-American affairs all through the 70s and 80s. He passed away about 6 weeks ago. I just found out through Facebook. So if you'll indulge me, I'm dedicating this performance to him, because in many ways, he's responsible for getting me here. And I think that's kind of great. I have the feeling we never talked about it. He didn't know I became a composer or anything. We were not in touch for 40 years. But I have the feeling if he were here, and he said, well, so you wrote a string quartet with a Beckett text, and he would probably say, well, of course you did. And sort of leave it at that. So that's what I have to say. So you'll be hearing Shenandoah, variations of Shenandoah. You'll hear Elena's string quartet. Then there'll be an intermission, and then by then I think I will be a very distant dream for all of you. And then